Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank you for joining our last episode of PTV Talks What's New in PTV Visum for 2023. I'm going to let a couple more people come in, so we'll start the webinar at approximately maybe a minute or so. Thank you. Hello again. So we're going to start our webinar now. I know there's a couple more people coming in, but once again, thank you for joining us today for our last episode of PTV Talks What's New in PTV Visum. We have two of our experts, Adam Groves and Chetan, here to discuss what's coming for 2023. I only have one announcement before this, and that is to look out for our 2023 PTV Talk schedule. We have fun and exciting new series coming out in 2023, and we would like for you guys to participate. So you'll get an email sometime shortly, and you can register for all or register individually. And Adam, we're ready to start.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tiffany, and thank you to everyone on the line for joining us today. As Tiffany mentioned, my name is Adam Groves, and I'll be doing the presentation today, but I also have Chetan Joshi on the line to help answer with any questions we may have at the end. Today, we'll be discussing the new features and improvement in PTV Visum version 2023. So just as a reminder, anyone who has an active maintenance agreement or subscription has access to the latest version. So if you'd like to try out the new version, please feel free to download it and begin exploring. We'll be sending out a link to that download page in a follow-up email, but you're also going to have access to that just through our regular website. So you can go on there and download it. Also take a look at the What's New document if you want to view some more detailed information about any of these new features. That's available either in the start page of Visum or on that download page as well. So for our agenda today, for the purpose of organizing the presentation, I grouped the new features into a couple different kind of buckets. The first is activity-based modeling support, the dynamic traffic assignment, transit and non-motorized modes. Then we'll talk about usability and speed improvements, and then we'll have a question and answer segment at the end. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to go ahead and enter them as you think of them in the questions box, and we'll try to get to as many as possible during the Q&A. You'll be muted throughout the presentation, so just feel free to put your questions in that question box. Also, we'll be recording this, so recording will be available after the fact. With that, we're going to dive right into our first topic, which is support for activity-based models. So before we get into the new features, I just want to take a quick minute just as a refresher in case you haven't used an ABM along with Visum. And that's that Visum is already a great platform for supporting activity-based models, has a number of features already in there that really help you build and use these types of models. First and foremost, it has a flexible and powerful scripting interface for integrating ABMs and various other things and for manipulating data. Visum also has included data structures for storing typical ABM data. These include population data such as persons and households, activity types and locations, as well as information about travel like trips, tours, schedules. Also, all these are built into Visum and you can visualize them nicely. So if you look over on the right-hand side of your screen here, you can see I can visualize tours and see trip purposes, modes of transportation, travel times, things like this. All this is integrated in the Visum data model as well, so it works really well with all the existing tools you may use, such as like link analysis with flow bundles, which makes it a really great tool for doing equity analysis and helps you leverage all that rich ABM data you have along with your travel demand model. Also, Visum's general speed in handling things such as assignment skimming are very helpful. Many of these ABMs are quite large and are complex. So anytime we can shave off some run times by making our software run faster, that's always a big help with these larger models. So again, these are all existing things that are in Visum already. I just want to make a mention of them just so to put in context with the rest of the system. Next thing I want to touch on really quickly is ActivitySim, since we're going to be discussing it today. So ActivitySim is becoming the leading ABM platform in the US. Many ABMs that are currently being developed or planned will be developed in ActivitySim. It's an open source consortium-led effort, so members of the consortium join, they fund and direct the development effort. If you want to know more, you can visit ActivitySim's website available by the link here. We're not affiliated with ActivitySim. They were involved in this project. I just want to give you a place to go to find some more information if maybe you're not familiar with ActivitySim. So ActivitySim is primarily an ABM engine. So you apply it with the input it needs, mostly in text files, and these come in the form of configuration files, CSV files for data, and matrices. It's going to process them and provide you with output files. Again, in text format, typically things like CSV files. There's not much in the way of graphical user interface or usability, and this is similar to a lot of other ABMs that are out there that have been used for a long time. And this can be challenging because it then takes quite a bit of effort to integrate these ABM engines with your travel demand modeling software. These input and output files tend to be really large, and oftentimes it's a big chore to store, manage, not to mention even like view, explore, and understand these data. So it really be a challenge. And this is an area where we feel like Visum, due to some of those reasons we discussed and we're going to discuss today, is a really great fit to use along with side ActivitySim. And this is the reason that we developed an ActivitySim interface to work directly with Visum. What this interface does, it allows you to store your ABM data, both as inputs and outputs directly in Visum. You're able to pass data back and forth with ActivitySim, as well as to run ActivitySim without the need to develop a script interface to do so. What I really like about this is this can be set up in such a way that once your model run is over, you've imported the results, you have all your input and output data for your ABM, plus your assignment results, all your past storage, all that in a single file, which makes passing data back and forth with colleagues, with clients really easy. It also allows you to explore and visualize all that data alongside each other and leads to a very streamlined process. So to dive a little bit more into detail about how this works, the interface really comes in the form of 3 new procedures. First is to export data to ActivitySim. That exports all the input data that ActivitySim needs from Visum. Then you run ActivitySim, and then you import those results back into Visum. And on the screenshot on the right here, you can see where those procedures are. Great thing about this is they're all configured by the graphical user interface. There's less messing around with like text configuration files. If you download version 2023, there is a new example file. It's demand ActivitySim, and that has a very small example file that shows you what this looks like. It doesn't include a distribution of ActivitySim. That's something if you want to actually run the model, you would need to download that as well, but it has all the input data, output data, all that kind of stuff on there. So feel free to download that and explore it. The interface also includes some additional functionality, such as the ability to do location-to-location skims. ABMs typically will have either 1, 2, or 3 zone systems. These consist of traditional zones or TAZs, micro-analysis zones or MAZs, as well as transit stops. So you can have a combination of those. Now in Visum, we store those MAZs or microzones as locations. Now you have direct support for doing MAZ to MAZ or location to location skims, which is very important for things like walk and bike where you need that additional resolution, as well as stop to stop skims for public transit. So this has in the past sometimes been done with outside pieces of software, but now that's all available directly within Visum. So it's one less thing you have to integrate or manage separately. It's all kind of built into that software. And on the next screen here, give you just kind of example what those dialog boxes look like. This is the export that exports all the input data that ActivitySims need. And here you can see how the graphical user interface, you can set up how those skims are exported for ActivitySim to consume. So also note that you also have the ability to run and import results from population sim as well as a part of this. Just as an additional piece too, if you're not familiar, this past year we launched Visum Publisher, which is a cloud-based visualization platform for travel demand model data. Basically allows you to directly export all your model data to the cloud for visualization that you can then share with teammates or clients. As part of this, we've also included a ABM trajectory visualization now is available. So you'll find that if you try the free trial, you'll be able to do that. It's available on our website. Sign up for a 30-day trial of Visum Publisher, play around with it, and see what kind of cool visualizations you can make. With that, we're going to move on over to our next topic, which is dynamic traffic assignment. So generally, when we're talking about dynamic traffic assignment in Visum, and particularly today, we're going to be talking about Visum's simulation-based dynamic traffic assignment, or SBA. We've released a couple of pretty important and nice updates to SBA for this year, as well as a few things that are kind of more along the lines of supporting functionality or things that are workflow items that work well with the process. So the first one of those is we now have a lane-based SBA. Prior to version 2023, this was always link-based, so you weren't able to restrict certain classes of vehicles from certain lanes. Now that's possible, so you're able to designate, for example, things like HOV lanes, do things like hard shoulder running, directional lanes, dedicated lanes for AVs, CVs, CAVs. All these are now possible. If you look at the video on the left or the right here, you'll see that on the leftmost lane, only blue vehicles because we restricted the yellow vehicles from entering those lanes. So this is a great new feature. In the past, it's been typically a little bit difficult to do some of these HOV lanes, so this makes the process much easier, much more streamlined. And this is just an example. This isn't an actual graphic of how you designate this, but in 2023, you weren't able, or 2022 rather, you weren't able to designate individual lanes, the TSIS for individual lanes. Now you are, and these can be things that can change over time as well. And then another example here, if we look at this bottom roadway, initially this topmost lane here has no traffic on it, and over time you're going to start to see only the yellow vehicles start to utilize that. Just another example of how this lane-based SBA would look like. The second big feature we've added is a hybrid macro-meso assignment. So what this does is allows you to do both a static assignment and a simulation-based assignment within the same model run. So prior to this, you could choose to run your assignment as either SBA or as a static assignment. Now this combines it. This is great because when you're talking about dealing with these really large models, sometimes you don't necessarily need that high of a resolution over the entire model. This allows you to use SBA only in critical areas where you need that additional level of detail. This also allows you to maintain the regional perspective though. So compared to maybe previously where you would have done a sub-area model rather than the whole model, you can still maintain the entire regional model, maintain path choice across the entire model. It's great because now you don't necessarily have to go through the process of coding complete intersection details like geometry, signal timing, things like that, if you don't need that level of detail in those areas. So another example would be maybe you're utilizing a regional travel demand model from a NPO, but you're working on a project with a city or county, and they're really only concerned about this level of detail in their particular jurisdiction. So they can code all the details into their network, simulate their network in SBA, use a static assignment for the rest, so they still get that regional context, but don't have to sacrifice doing the detailed modeling they want to do in their own area. As a part of this as well, a new feature is now you can warm start SBA with a static assignment. This is possible with both hybrid or just a standard SBA. So basically, you can use a static assignment as an initial solution for SBA. Hopefully something that, again, will save you a little bit of time and modeling as well. Now we move on to some of the features that work well alongside of SBA, but also could be used for a number of other other contexts. For example, maybe if you're working with Visum as well, if you want to do micro simulation. The first is going to be a network-wide signal optimization, and this is now available with RBC controllers as well. This wasn't previously possible. So now you can input all this controller data, run a network-wide optimization that you can then utilize during your SBA, or again, if you're doing Visum work, you may want to have all that information coded in this way and stored in Visum, and then exported out to Visum for micro simulation later. You have a variety of ways to kind of work. You can do offset and green time optimization, offset green time and cycle time. You can have weights for different paths, as well as objective functions for wait time in the network, number of queued vehicles. You really have a couple of different ways you can do this. So this really helps with these large regional DTA models. You really need a way to effectively time the system so you don't end up with a really poorly functioning traffic signal system in the simulation. You can see here, a difference in the space-time diagram as before and after you've done the network-wide optimization. The next piece is pseudodynamic volume. So this was a feature that was already in 2022, but it's been significantly improved for 2023. And this is part of the functionality that enables the hybrid assignment. In short, what pseudodynamic volumes does is breaks the result of a static assignment for a single time period out into multiple time periods. Now, this is available as a separate procedure. If you do it as part of a hybrid assignment, there's no need to specifically deal with this. It's just part of the process. But there are some other use cases where you may want to use this. And if I start the animation here, what this will do is it will actually respect the travel times as well. So trips that take place across multiple time periods, the volumes will be separated into the buckets for those individual time periods for the links they're traveling on during that time period. In much the same way that for a dynamic assignment, you would need to define a demand time series, either using percentages or weights, or have multiple matrices for the different time periods. You would need to do the same thing here. So again, this is very powerful for using the hybrid assignment, but there's also a few other use cases where this may be interesting. You can see here a chart how it will break out the results of that static assignment into volumes per time period. In addition to SBA, new structure enables dynamic ODME. It also run dynamic flow bundles, so you can have time restrictions for your select link analysis. You're also now able to export Visum paths with dynamic volumes. And you can also do sub-network generation with a demand time series. So these are all kind of things where any kind of simulation be helpful. This is also can be useful for other interesting kind of like sketch planning things if for reason you need to understand how the flows change over time. And I do have one example of that, which is population or of flows through a rail station. So these are flows from a regular static assignment, but these are broken out for time periods, so you can see now, step through the time periods and see how those people move through the station. So quite a few ways this could be really useful in your modeling. All right, with that, we're going to transition over to our improvements for transit and non-motorized modes. So a lot of times with transit agencies will have fare car data. So they'll have check-in, check-out. In the case of something like the Macro-Meso rail, in the DC area, you tap your card when you enter the system and you tap it when you leave. So Visum has the capability to import all that data. With that, we've introduced a couple of new plausibility checks that help match that up to the network. And it can be in the form of check-in, check-out data where you don't necessarily see those transfers, or it can be check-in, check-out per vehicle. So you can maintain that throughout the entire path of the vehicle. So this was available before, but it's been significantly improved by breaking these out as much as 150 times faster. So if you have that kind of public transportation data, it's really easy and a lot faster now to import that into Visum for analysis. Next is stop area assignment. So many times if you're doing an assignment to the transit network, if you do more of like a direct assignment, you would need to generate separate zones for the individual transit stops, create connectors, convert your stop area matrix over to a zone matrix, and then run the assignment. There's a new procedure for that that really consolidates that down. There's a generate zones for stop areas procedure. So if you're doing this type of transit analysis, there's a lot less kind of intermediate steps you have to go through. Visum's going to take care of a lot of that for you. Then you can just run the assignment. So it's much easier if you have this transit data, fare car data overall between these two new functionalities to import it, run assignments, do analysis. Additionally, we have some improvements to the GTFS importer. Weekly calendars are now imported, as well as the shapes.txt file is now imported as intermediate points on the link. So you get a lot better kind of true shape with those GTFS importers. And along with this, there's a speed improvement to the GTFS importer as well. If you ever used the GTFS importer before, you may know the typical workflow is that you would import that GTFS file into a blank Visum file, and then import that by the import PUT supply from Visum into your other network. So that's been improved as well to correspond with the improvements to the GTFS importer. Those intermediate points flow through into your new Visum network. The routing's been improved, and once again, there's a speed improvement with that as well. We also have improvements to the OSM importer. So if you've used that before, you know that you have a drop-down box where you can decide what type of data you want to import, and there's a couple of kind of pre-populated versions of that with varied levels of details. So you can do a more coarse network if you're mainly concerned with like highway network, all the way down to really detailed urban networks with things like pedestrian links and things like that. We now have included a new version, which is the detailed urban bicycle network. So it's going to import all that bicycle route information from OSM, including things like the type of cycling facility, cycle track, cycleway, all those various different kind of bicycle treatments that are available. It'll also give you the surface type that's available. So is it a dirt trail? Is it an asphalt? As well as import those named cycle routes. So in like the DC area, we have the WMS trail that comes in. It's flagged that it's part of a named cycle route, as well as the name of the route is on there as well. So this really helps you get really detailed bicycle information quickly through OSM. To go along with that, we've included an import of the elevation data that's available from OSM. This is useful for bicycle applications, but also many other applications that's now part of all the OSM imports. And if you're not aware too, Visum also has a dedicated bicycle assignment that's available. So this pairs really well with this new detailed urban bicycle network import for you to do various types of bicycle applications very quickly using these two tools. And just to give you kind of an idea, this is a network of the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area or part of it here that was imported from OSM. Gives you a really detailed bicycle network, and this was combined with some publicly available bike share data to kind of run some assignments. So really the amount of effort required to get this really detailed network is pretty minimal. And then here is a isochrone that was basically shows you the accessibility of various parts of the area to any of those bike share stations. So again, really quick to do kind of like these accessibility studies or quick assignments using this detailed importer. Next up, we are going to move on to our graphics, usability, and speed improvements. We have a number of speed improvements to talk about. Probably first and most exciting is an up to 50% time savings in PRT skim calculations. So this is really an opportunity to save a lot of time. Again, as models get bigger and more complicated, we want to save as much time as possible. So through a modernization of how these are stored and used, the assignment paths, we're now able to speed that up really considerably, up to 50%. You also see it's up to 70% in the incremental assignment and filtering of public transit, but also a more modest but nice improvement of 10% with public transit assignments and skim calculation as well. So it's all just part of our continued effort to keep things really up to date and as fast and efficient as possible. For graphic updates, the two big updates are going to be, first, you can rotate the link bar labels. So you can do this either globally or individually. This means that links that are oriented vertically can have their link bar labels displayed horizontally or whatever angle you would like. Globally, this is done by right-clicking on the links button in your network editor and selecting the bar labels set rotation angle. And that's where you can choose vertical, horizontal, or user-defined angle or along the bar. Here you can just see a quick how these were moved from being vertical to horizontal. If you want to do these for individual bar labels, you can right-click on them, and then you have the option to do that, and you can move them vertical, horizontal, or you can actually drag it and rotate the bar around yourself. For the legend, you now have the ability to set the width individually for each of those legend items, the horizontal width, and that just helps you maintain a nice compact legend. Text will wrap appropriately, and if I click over to the next slide here, it should be able to see an example of that. So you can see here how you can rotate individual bar labels. So both of these things just help you produce really nice looking maps if you need to send these out. And this shows you how you can do it globally. And it's possible to reset the rotation as well. Now for the legend, you can see here, you can just, within the legend, just interactively drag that and keep your legend nice and small. Also, for the new version, the procedure sequence has been updated. So first you'll notice the graphical representation has changed, and now it looks a little more like a traditional outline view that you may see in other places as well than it did previously. The change is not only graphical though, now groups can be nested to any depth. In this way, you can easily move or copy these groups around within the procedure sequence, and overall gives the procedure sequence a little more modern feel. Also, being able to nest it to additional levels really helps you just better organize and maintain complicated procedure sequences, and just is an overall nice visual upgrade as well. Next, we've introduced user-defined groups for user-defined attributes. Oftentimes in big models, you'll find that you end up with a lot of user-defined attributes for various network elements. And sometimes as that number gets larger and larger, it can be a little bit more difficult to organize and sort through all those attributes and understand what they're for. Now with these user-defined groups, you can group them together based on the year, what the purpose is, maybe their calibration data, collected data, what their purpose is, any of those things that you see fit. This also allows you to add all the attributes from a particular group to your list views. When you pull up the attribute selection dialog, you can now just select the group and move it over, so it populates all those individual attributes into your list view. Now you can create or manage these user-defined groups by going to the list menu and selecting user-defined groups. You can add a user-defined attribute to a group in the dialog box when adding or editing those user-defined attributes. When you're in that like add or edit user-defined attributes dialog too, it's possible to create a new group directly from there as well. And this is just one of those things that just overall helps you keep your model better organized and easier to understand what all those attributes do. If you would like to use additional sources of any kind of background maps or imagery, you now have the option to use WMS or WTS background maps. This was possible before, but the interface has been updated. Previously, you had to know the entire URL and what the format of that was. Now you only need the base URL for the service, and then the configuration can be done within the dialog box. Allows you to select various layers and styles, and then you also get this nice preview. So in this case, I have an example of an imagery service for Washington, D.C. This one's pretty straightforward because it only has one layer, but a lot of these services have a lot of different layers that you can select and change the styles, things like this. So it makes it a lot easier for you to configure these outside imagery services to work within Visum. So there's been an update to the way Python is installed along with Visum. Visum now installs its own Python installation under the Visum directory and no longer installs it in the program files directory. This just makes things a lot cleaner. Oftentimes, if you may have multiple different versions of Python or multiple different versions of Visum or other software with Python installations, this just keeps everything nice and separated by having it within the Visum directory. Has a bunch of the add-ins that are supported already installed. You're still free to use your own virtual environments or point to additional libraries from the user directory. Before we move on, there is just one other, the newest service pack was released. I didn't get a chance to make some slides for it. One exciting new feature as well is an improvement to the UDAs format importer. So if you're importing intersection geometry data or signal timing data from things like Synchro, maybe from ATMS system like Centrax, things like that, the importer has been improved. You have a lot more options of what you can do. This is a shared interface between both Vistro and Visum. But if you have a lot of intersection data and any of these kind of formats and ATMS, as well as things like count data as well, definitely something worth exploring, using that to get that data into your Visum model. All right, with that, that concludes the What's New presentation. We're now going to take some time to do questions and answers. So if you have any questions, please now enter them in the questions box, and I'll try to go through as many of those as possible. One question related to the ActivitySim interface. I can't remember if I touched on this or not. ActivitySim installation is not included in Visum. It's still something you need to install separately. We're not providing that, so it's something to be downloaded from the ActivitySim website. Question regarding path retention in Visum. Yes, path retention for your assignments is available. There's an option that can be checked within the procedure sequence that allows you to, procedure settings that allow you to toggle on or off path storage. all that gets stored within the Visum file, so it's stored pretty efficiently. And just to give you a little bit of idea as far as scale, I know one large ABM that had all the ABM data, so synthetic population data, tourist trips. It was, I think, roughly 4 million people, maybe like 11 million trips, along with complete path storage. Was like a little less than half a gig file, I think. So the storage of all those paths and ABM data is very efficient within Visum. The question about traffic timings, how can they be optimized? There's quite a few different features for doing that. There's method, I believe, the objective functions for amount of wait time, queuing. There is, I believe, some ways in there to do it with counts as well. So there's a pretty flexible system for doing those counts. That is discussed a little more in depth in the What's New document, and I believe there's an example file as well that shows you how to configure that. Can you download Visum outputs on an OSM network? I guess, Chetan, what do you? Oh, you just answered it on there. So you could export a shapefile, but if you didn't run the assignment on the OSM network, you would have to do some map matching to get that put over top of the OSM network. Back to the traffic timings. Are you gathering? How is the data being gathered for the traffic video detection? So typically, you could do it one of two ways. You can use your assignment, whether that be a static assignment for that period or the dynamic assignment to get traffic counts. But if you have video detection data that's available in that UTDF format, you would be able to import that with that new UTDF importer. So you will need to, that's possible to import that and use the actual observed counts as well. And that's both in, should be available in both Vistro and Visum. The question came in if parts of this like ActivitySim integration could be useful in helping to integrate with other activity-based models or similar systems. I would think in some ways it probably would, because you could use that, if nothing else, that ActivitySim export to help get you some of those export files you need, CSV files that whatever your ABM may be would need. So I can see some instances where you might be using some of the features of that without necessarily using directly ActivitySim. For the signal timings, can it be sent directly to the controller? Not at this time. You wouldn't be able to directly send those. Is it possible to optimize signal split without changing cycle length in Visum? In Visum 2022, the procedure doing this seems to change both signal split and cycle. I believe that is improved in 2023. Chetan, do you happen to know off the top of your head if that's possible?
Yeah, actually you can do that in Visum 2022 as well. There is a selection on the signal controller menu over there where you can either do in the drop down cycle length, or only splits based on a given cycle length, or none. So there are three options available, and these continue to be present in Visum 2023 and as well.
Okay, thanks, Jay. All right, I think we're starting to see the questions slow down a little bit. There may be one or two that I can maybe need a little bit more information or can answer offline. I did just see one come in. Previously, it was only possible with stage-based controllers due to network optimization. Now you can do RBC as well, so that's another one of the improvements. Yeah, with that, I think we're going to end the question and answer. My email address is adam.groves@ptvgroup.com. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. If there's anything I may have missed when going through these questions, I'll try to get back to you within the next day or two. But I think with that, we're going to go ahead and conclude today's session. I do appreciate everyone taking the time to join. Again, be on the lookout for that follow-up email that's going to have links to download the new version. You're also going to have the availability of the recording of this as well as to download the presentation. So please keep on the watch for that. And with that, thank you all so much for attending today, and I hope you have a great holiday season. All right. Thank you.